and so forth. I won't start that ball rolling right now because we don't have the time. So the president then had another meeting with me, and he says that he needed someone who would be outside of the government, someone who has not been there, to give him unbiased opinion about things, one who could call it as he saw it, one who would not be beholden to any kind of party thing or any kind of impediment in terms of the advice that he would need. And so he said to me, all right, I've decided that you will be the vice president. Well, the vice presidency is not a birthright of anybody. It's not like what's going on here in America now. Hillary Clinton says, well, because she's got 18 million voters, therefore she's entitled to the vice presidency. But it is the choice of the president, and therefore Obama has to make that decision. So it was also that Tolbert had to make his own decision as to who he would choose to be his vice president. So I was privileged and fortunate to accept the position based on a number of conditions which we discussed. Number one, he and I would retire immediately after the term was over, and we put that into law. After that 8-year term, we're both going to turn the government over to a civilian, have elections, and let some civilian people rule the country. I agreed to that. I supported it because I just went there as time being, to that vice president. I was attracted by the president's passion for the development of Liberia, contrary to what press and other people may say. But the president convinced me of his deep interest in bringing development to Liberia, and we saw that physically. Monrovia streets were paved, new streets were opened, schools were built. Rally time, I got a rally time picture here with me and the president sitting in his office. And this picture says a lot of things. There's a story behind this picture, which I may not have time to tell you, but that's the picture. And you see that on his day, he had rally time. Those of you who were young enough or old enough to know rally time, this was the time the president was motivating the Liberian people to self-reliance and self-determination. Farm to market roads, clinics. The last place he and I were was in Vahum, way up near the Sierra Leone border, where the people there were living in darkness, no road, and the only access they have outside of Vahum was to Sierra Leone. Many of the young men and women went to school in Sierra Leone. In fact, they thought that they were in Sierra Leone. The people in Vahum always believed that they were in Sierra Leone. They were using Sierra Leone money and all of that. Road was there. Bridges were built. Clinics were built all over the place. I, as vice president, my role was, constitutional role was to preside over the Senate. And I didn't have to be there all the time to preside because there was the president pro tempore who would take my place when I was not there. But the president designated me to do a number of things. Among the things was to dedicate the multilateral high schools in Zwedru, Vanjama, Grand Bassa, Bon County. Also to dedicate, I was sort of like a priest vice president. So I was in charge of some religious dedication business. I dedicated water systems in Bon County, in Vanjama. Water system, running water, electric plants. I dedicated the Omega transmission system that the US government put up there to track satellites underground, above ground, and whatever else they did there, we don't know, because we're not scientific. But I dedicated that. And the man who built it lives in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I went to shake his hand. Native American man who built that thing there. The challenging task I had was the chairman of the Rural Development Task Force, because the president had a desire to streamline government, because government was too big and not effective and efficient. So we did a year of study along with UNDP and others to streamline government and to weed out waste and overlapping and give some power to the local governments. In our recommendation, we recommended that just as senators from the counties were elected, representatives were elected, so too the days of the vicegerency of the district commissioner or the superintendent of counties must be over. That was Arthur Barclay's thing. And therefore we recommended that superintendents be elected by the people so that they can be amenable to the people that elected them. This recommendation was made 1980, March 1980. We made our report to the cabinet. Also that government ministries be streamlined and be reduced, that in each county, for instance, public works would have their county public works with all of the equipment, material. We went to China. China was going to provide those equipment, road building. Japan was going to provide those road equipments, and so that each county, when your tractor breaks down or the battery is weak, you don't have to go spend 2 weeks in Monrovia to wait for it, but each county would have the supplies and road building equipment. We also discovered that the radio broadcast and communication was very important, and therefore to centralize the communication so that from a central point, and I was biased to Bong County in Banga there, I stood up there and looked this way, that way, and Banga became the center. And I said, from this center here, Mr. President, if you broadcast, people will hear you even in Sierra Leone. We found out that waves go in concentric circles, and much of what was broadcast went into the sea, and therefore centralizing it would help all of our people hear the message of the officials and government. So those were the things that we were working on and recommended. In the area of development and health in Liberia, I went to Norway, Oslo, Norway, on a state visit, met with business people, and there was a gentleman who had been in Monrovia for 3 weeks trying to get a seismic report on oil drilling in Liberia. This gentleman brought his report to me in Norway, brought his papers, communications, telex, and all of those things, and I told him, make copies, give it to me, and I was going to take it to the mansion to the president and show it to him. And I went there, returned to Monrovia, met the president. I showed him what had happened there and what I reported that. And the president says, all right, Mr. Vice President, you be in charge of this, send for the people, let them come and get what they need. The problem here is that we Liberians have done damage to Liberia, we ourselves. And if anybody remembers, in October of 1977, in my inaugural speech, I said the problem of Liberia is not the country. Liberia is the most beautiful country. Topography is beautiful. We got water, enormous water facilities, rivers. we got some of the beautiful beaches, and I was in Florida not too long ago. I said, your beaches don't match the beaches we have in Liberia. So it's not Liberia, but it's us. What is wrong with Liberia is us. And Mr. Chairman and commissioners, this is going to be the real problem, because it's easy, it takes about a month or two to build a bridge across the river. It takes no time to run electric wires and running water. So the infrastructure, the physical infrastructure is easy to be rebuilt. Put me some water, man. You will sit down here for nothing? Sorry. Yeah, but the most difficult task here is to change the mindset of the people, to give them a new orientation in terms of what the new Liberia envisage. Now, we talk about the historical background, before 1847 and 1821 and all of that. So the quote-unquote, the Americo-Liberians, which is a misnomer, and the Congo people, which is a misnomer, and I know the background to all of those, have had our time, so that from J.J. Roberts to William V.S. Tubman was an era. So the Americo-Liberians, Congos, if you want to join that group together, they have had their time of like 100 and some odd years of that period. And then you got the Tubman and Tolbert era, which is part of the so-called Americo-Liberian Congo as it has turned out to be. So there was that period. And we, the country people, had our time. We had our chance. We came at a ripe, golden stage where we could have transformed the political system and make changes in Liberia that we all cried about. But we squandered it. We damaged it. There's the Doe era, perhaps the most repressive. And then following that, then you had these transitional or interim governments. And actually, in my own mind, the Civil War does not really relate that much to the past 1821 and in between there. But what I have found out, it's basically fueled by greed and grabs for power. Who's going to rule? Who's going to see? You heard about the 10 parties and 10 candidates. Yeah, I saw them. In fact, I got a newspaper. I forgot the name of it, at the Daily Observer, with all of the candidates and the parties there, 10. And I said, why can't they consolidate and run against, say, Doe or somebody else? But it's greed that fueled it, power. I've been there, so I know. Greed that fueled it. So that is that aspect, and I'm sure you're going to have some questions of me on that. But I want to say here, while I'm alive, that Mr. Tolbert had the genuine interest in the rebuilding of Liberia. There's evidence to show it of what we did, road building. In fact, right in that 1980, when I was coming from Cape Palmas, the road construction to pave it was already in Ganta. And on Ganta, we're going to branch off, go to Tapetang, and that Tapetang was going to go to Cape Palmas. And then this other part was going to go to Nimba County, Yekepa, and connect with the Guinea border right there. On the drawing board, there was a plan for the Pan-African Highway that was going to come from Senegal, Gambia, Guinea, and connect with Sierra Leone on the Mano River, and each country was going to do their own piece. to take the Pan-African highway all across to South Africa. And one of the things, the feasibility things that was being done is that President sent me to the eastern part of Liberia to go and inspect with engineers, photographers, and to bring back a report on what it will take to build what we call the Atlantic Highway, coming from Cape Mount all the way to Cape Palmas on the sea coast. Because most roads went interior way, as you know. And before the roads went interior way, the river boat, you know, the canoes and the river things happened. And that highway, we came back, brought a report, how many bridges it takes. Right here in Minnesota, this year, St. Paul, I guess you call it, the over things, what you call it, override, right? You take one of those, you can connect all the bridges in Liberia. So the problem was not lack of material or lack of the will to do it, resources to do it. It's just plan. We didn't have plan. But this is one time we had a plan. The president had a 5-year plan for the development of Liberia on the economic area, focusing mainly on agriculture. And so let me swing into the rice thing, which I call the rice fiasco. The president determined that Liberia ought to feed itself, because Liberia historically did that. Did you know that during slavery times, that before Liberia was Liberia, the pre-Liberia, you know why they call that place Grain Coast? That's why they came and got rice. The Portuguese and all these people came and got rice right from Cape Mount. Rice. Liberians were shipping tons of rice. They were doing business with the Europeans long before 1821. Liberians are resilient and progressive people. Our people had dealings in coffee. We shipped coffee. And when the settlers came along the river banks there, St. Paul, Millsburg, White Plains there, we were producing sugar. In the 1870s, we were shipping sugar to Europe. It's in the book. It's in the history books. Camwood, piassava, Malagueta pepper. They were shipping it. So the president looked into that and said, Liberians can we can feed ourselves. So we had two problems facing Liberia in 1980. One was, how do we get away from, because we have shifted from producers to consumers. Firestone, Bomb Mine, Lamco, all these. So rice producers now became consumers of rice. Firestone started off first by supplying rice for their workers. And the rice was not imported from America. The rice was collected from the interior of Liberia, from Bon County, Lofa County. The Firestone trucks used to go there, and people brought their hampers of rice and sold it. Paramount chiefs were expected to produce rice for the Firestone plantation, and they did. And of course, the consumers' bellies got bigger, and so Firestone had to import rice. Pusawa, you heard about Pusawa rice? Where the ration in Firestone was 30 cups of rice. Pusawa is 30 in the Pele language, 30 cups. So when you bring your bag, the man will ask you how many, you say Pusawa. That's how we got the name Pusawa. It's not the quality of rice or grade of rice, it's just naming how many cups of rice each portion will get. So what we did then on this rice thing, rice bag was $22 in Monrovia. So the question was whether we should import rice and subsidize it. Government should subsidize imported rice in order to keep the price at $22 or $30. That was part of the debate that was going on in cabinet. Should we rely on imported rice? That was one side of the argument. The other side of the argument, supported by the Ministry of Agriculture, Florence Chenaway as Minister of Agriculture, who was very much in favor of subsidizing the Liberian farmers so that they could produce their own rice. So we made a study. What will it cost for a 100-pound bag if produced in Liberia by Liberians? We brought in Firestone. By this time, Firestone was experimenting with their swamp rice. They had their bag of rice there, how much it would cost. Labor intensive, of course, rice production is. We had people from Beijing. When you go into Cape Mount, there's a big area that was cleared. They were going to produce rice there locally. And so, should government get away from subsidizing imported rice and subsidize the Liberian farmers? So, we sent the Minister of Commerce and Transportation, Mr. John Sherman, to all of the rice-producing countries around the world. Well, around the world, that's stretching it too far. But from the most rice-producing countries. There's a place called Stuttgart in Arkansas, and by the way, Arkansas is the #1 rice-producing state in America. Texas, Louisiana, those are next, but Arkansas, we had rice and a table long like from here over yonder. Mr. Sherman and the ministry brought rice samples from these countries, different grades, broken rice, fine rice, all sorts. Label how much it costs in that country, how much it costs in China, how much it costs in Taiwan, how much it costs in Arkansas, how much it costs to import the rice. There were some people who government had given the license to import rice. So you can see the contention here. The rice importers, with their license to import rice to make profit, wanted to keep the rice imported. Firestone, Beijing rice people, Liberian farmers, small or big, wanted to do Liberian rice. We have survived on Liberian rice for a long time. I remember when rice cup, salmon cup, they used to call it salmon cup, was 2 cents. I saw it during 1941, during the war. During the war, where did food come from? From the Liberian farms. So Mr. Tolbert felt that we could go back to producing rice. So he said, by year so-and-so, Liberia should feed themselves. Before the cabinet would determine whether to increase the price of rice or subsidize Liberian farmers or subsidize the importation of rice, before we could make the decision, it leaked out that rice price was going up and Mr. Tolbert was going to benefit from it. I don't know if Mr. Tolbert having a rice farm. I flew over that. I had my own airplane, church airplane, not government plane. And I didn't see no big rice farms in Bentall or in Balatoi, where he had his rubber farm. I saw rubber plantations. But I knew people who were engaged in rice, James Phillips or Thomas Phillips, engaged in rice production. Private people were engaging in rice production. Between River Cess and Sasstown, the Kavala River Basin, there was a Liberian group were interested in mechanized rice production in that area, down there. Very flat land, just like Arkansas, that could have done that. So the thing leaked out, and so then word around to the agitators and said Tolbert's going to benefit from rice production, and therefore Tolbert carrying rice price up and so on. And so the demonstration was planned. The planned demonstration occurred on a Saturday, and you all got the dates and all of that because you commissioners, I know, got people doing research and studies and all of that. And you are sharp, I'm going to tell you that. I'm going to give you sharp. You got those sharp questions you're producing here. Very sharp, so I expect you to shoot me down when I get through. But the demonstration got started. It started in New Crew Town. And gradually it was coming. And they were monitoring it across the Viatown Bridge, and it was getting